Yo, let's talk about this situation too. This Kyrie situation. So, welcome to the broadcast. This is NFTV weekly, just a weekly show talking about pop culture, talking about politics, things in the news. N stands for Information TV. Information is key for making informed decisions, having an educated opinion on things, having an educated outlook on things before you jump to rash decisions, before you jump to canceling somebody, before you do anything like that. So, with that being said, I'm your host, Kincaid. People call me 44. So let's get right to it. All right, 44K. So let's get right to it. Charles Barkley weighs in on Kyrie Irving, does not want anyone canceled. All right. So this is my thing right here, right? So you have Charles Barkley, who got on his broadcast, NBA TNT, and called for the suspension of Kyrie Irving. Called for the suspension of Kyrie Irving. You could tell by the way he was talking. He didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't know the ins and outs of the situation. It was just a situation where a particular group was upset, and he came to the rescue of that particular group without having all the information. Kyrie posted a link to a video, and that was it. No context included, anything. When it was brought to the attention by reporters to the owner, Kyrie, rightfully so, feeling a certain type of way because he was attacked by the media all last year by his stance on the vaccine mandate, the mask mandate, and these different type of things right there. So he already has a contentious relationship with the reporters, and them not telling the truth, them manipulating the truth, things of that nature. So when fresh into the season, already a rough season, Ben Simmons not playing well, team off to a rough start, not a winning record, then this comes up, they automatically go on an attack, and he didn't respond how they wanted him to respond. But once he did respond, he told them off the rip, like, I support all religions, all ethnic groups, all cultures. I'm about love and hate. I'm about bringing light to situations, and all I'm doing is bringing us in search of truth in regards to my culture, my heritage, my roots and things of that nature. That wasn't good enough for him. Kept pressing the issue. And then when they asked him again, he said, I cannot be anti-Semitic because I know where I come from. Basically meaning he can't be anti-Semitic because he believes he's from one of the lost tribes of Israel. So when you have these sets of beliefs and things of that nature, you in search of things, you look at different documentaries, you read different books, you do all these different type of things because you're in a search of truth. So if I'm in a search of truth and I may be glancing, through the Bible or something like that, and I just post the Bible, that doesn't necessarily mean every last word that's included in the Bible that I support and I agree with. It's some things in the Old Testament or in parts of Revelations or something like that that I might not necessarily fully agree with. It shouldn't be totally put on me because I'm like, okay, I'm doing some research, and right now I'm watching this documentary on the Old Testament. I'm watching a documentary on Revelation. So he posted a link to a platform in regards to that. Fast forward to once Charles Barkley and the NBA TNT crew got a hold of it, they get on there huffing and puffing. Shaq and Charles, they're on TV for comedy relief. They're the goofballs. They're the goofies. So for Charles Barkley, for Shaquille O'Neal to get on there and say Kyrie's not like us, he's not conscious like us. Kyrie has more consciousness in his pinky than Shaq and Charles Barkley combined. So off the rip, you should have, I knew it was gonna be bull coming out of both their mouths after Shaq said that. Because this is a young man, 30 years old. Mother wasn't a full-blood indigenous person. Always been a spiritual person. Always been somebody that operates on a higher plane, more than basketball. He's always, thank God for the gifts and talents that he has, but he's always been somebody that says he's more than just a basketball player. So. Back when Ingram on the Ingram report said to LeBron James, shut up and dribble, everybody went up in arms because of that. Because they said we more than basketball players. We have way more talents. And I agree with that. That's a fact. You should be able to have other interests. Basketball is just a launch pad to your other interests, to be a philanthropist, to provide education opportunities to less fortunate kids, to get involved in different platforms that you support climate change or, homelessness or whatever like that. You just use basketball and your talents as a launching pad into that. Kyrie, just one thing that he's just into spirituality. He's into finding his culture, his ethnicity, learning more about that, learning where he came from. Where did we come from besides the history that's given to us about we're strictly, about slavery, and that's it. Like, we don't know too much about before then, about what different tribes we came from Africa, or what part of the continent of Africa we came from, or even before that. So that's something that he's in search in. So he, said he put Yahweh into the search bar, then the movie came up. Nobody ever asked him, did he watch the full movie before he posted it? Or was it just one of those cases when you pull up a movie on Netflix or Amazon, you instantly have the share tab, so you can just share like, hey y'all, this is what I'm watching tonight, and then you share the movie, and we've all done it. We've all put it in our group threads with our friends or with our family members, like boom, share like, oh, this is what I'm on right now. This is what I'm watching. So from all that, you have a situation where, now Charles Barkley, because black people, rightfully so, have begun to, threaten to boycott the NBA. Definitely called Shaq, Jalen Rose, Charles Barkley, all these dudes to the carpet because they went too hard on this man. Like, if he made an honest mistake, and he admitted that he made a mistake because he didn't know all that was in the movie, and some of the things that came to light that was in the movie, he said it was unfortunate and he doesn't support those statements, and he's apologized. But now it seems that the owners and, the powers that be are trying to do something that a lot of our ancestors and our grandparents and things like that told us about, what they did to the slaves back in the day, and that was called buck breaking. So tobacco or, tending to the fields fast enough or whatever, and they're not listening and they're looking tired, they'll get the biggest, strongest, meanest slave, bring him to the middle of the field and beat him and beat him and beat him until, he cried out for his life or he broke all the way down. And then that would send a message to all the remaining other slaves like, dang, if they broke Buddy like this, then I know I can't stand up to this. So Kyrie, being somebody that stood 10 toes down when it came to the vaccine mandate and didn't break and took the suspension and took the loss of money and stood on what he believed in, they felt like he was the perfect person to bring out. Like, no, we not about to have any of this anymore. We gotta nip this in the bud now. We can't have NBA players if the next cause comes up that they want to stand for, that we can't have them, feeling like they have that much power over us, the owners that own the franchise. So we have to find some way, some fashion to make an example of him. And I feel like this is the instance that they're using to make an example of this, because there's no way in hell that this situation has blown out to this proportion, because this sets precedence. This sets such a bad precedent that the snowball effect that's going to occur because of this is going to be so dangerous, because you have a situation where an individual with no context just posted a picture of a movie that he was watching, and now they've conflated all the material that was in that movie to him as a person. There were actual networks calling him anti-Semitic, saying that he said these different things, associating these anti-Semitic tropes with him as if he said it himself. So I was talking to my cousin, and I'm like, he might have the lane for a lawsuit for defamation, because he never said anything. So since he never said anything, but people are getting on there and saying and associating the things said on the documentary as if he said it, and then using that for their reasons to cancel contracts like what Nike did, and suspend him without pay and do all these different type of things, then it's a defamation case that I feel like he has, and he should definitely think about getting a lawyer and get in that case, because I feel like he will win, because they went too hard. Like, this situation has went viral, and that's the thing that we have to begin to realize what's happening in today's society. You have these certain situations that in the past, without the 24-hour news cycle or anything like that, you could sit down, have a conversation, have discourse, come to an understanding. That person realizes they were in the wrong, and then you move on from that. But now that you have YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all these different platforms where everyone has a hot take, just like me now wanting to put my 2 cents into it, you have this going on 24/7 that now it goes viral, and now it's blown to a whole different proportion. And that becomes dangerous, because now we're not thinking logically or with reason. We're acting off an emotion, because we're getting emotional feelings associated with the headlines and the 30-second videos and different things like that, and nobody's sitting taking the time out to really unpack the situation and gain a full understanding of both sides. So that led to this situation where you have Charles Barkley, who says, I don't know Kyrie Irving. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I think he's been suspended, rightfully so, and I think he should come back and play in the NBA. So what is all this? I don't know Kyrie Irving. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. What is that about, though? That's something that just screams sucker to me, because the NBA is a small fraternity. It's only so many men that have played in the NBA. Somebody that LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Dwayne Wade or somebody knows and has contact with Kyrie Irving. Kyrie gave $1.5 million to the WNBA to help pay their salaries during the COVID lockdown. Kyrie Irving has donated to build fresh water systems in third world countries. Kyrie Irving is always somebody that has been conscious and given to those in need and spent his money in positive ways. But just so you can play both sides of the fence, you feel the need to say, I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I think he's been suspended, rightfully so, and I think he should come back and play in the NBA. No, man, you're just trying to walk it back because you see that the powers that be are taking this to a whole nother level. A whole nother level. It's been instances plenty of times where other groups have made tasteless jokes about the black community and nobody had to donate $500,000 to the NAACP. Nobody was losing 500, contracts with Nike or suspended from their jobs or anything indefinitely without being allowed to come back after the said time was reached. It never goes that far with us. But people forget about the genocide that our people have went through in the past and just up until the Jim Crow era. So everybody likes talking about slavery. Everybody likes talking about all these different things back in the slavery times. But let's talk about the 1950s and the 1960s. Let's talk about that. My dad was born in 1950. My dad will be 73 this year. So it's not even a generation away that you had lynchings down south where they had to, it's still senators that won't sign off on anti-lynching bills. We had situations with redlining where we couldn't have houses. We had situations where the World War II veterans coming back and couldn't use the GI Bill to buy homes in the suburbs, in the newly built suburbs. And those homes 20 years later were going for 200,000 and 300,000 on refinancing anything, helping to create generational wealth. Nobody wants to talk about that because that's too fresh. Everybody wants to say, oh, slavery was so long ago. Why are you guys still feeling about that? No, Jim Crow era happened after World War II. So our pain is even more fresh than the pain that they're talking about. So let's really talk about this though. Let's really talk about it. But that goes to a whole different thing of, that's why it's important to have ownership. And I don't care what culture you are, whatever your culture is, whoever you are, you need to be out there trying to have some type of ownership, own land, own a business, own something that's going to give you some type of, independence over your own life, sovereignty over your own life, because any type of situation where, you are being paid and another person has full control over, your ability to showcase your skill sets to provide for your family, then you can get in dangerous situations, especially in the climate that we're in now with this cancel culture. But let's read on a little bit more. Said, I don't like using the term cancel culture because I don't want anyone canceled, Barkley responded, but you should be called to the carpet if you said something wrong. And once again, they got this, you said something wrong. Kyrie never said nothing. But let's continue. I don't believe somebody should lose their job or things like that, but you should be called out for something you said stupid. I've been called out many times and I've had no problem with that, but I hate the term cancel culture because very few people are canceled. I don't know, man. That junk is, that situation with Buddy is so trash. Like, I hate when people don't stand on nothing, where they just try to play it safe. Buddy done made hundreds of millions of dollars, gambled away hundreds of millions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? Been in so many off-putting situations, and this young man, and you're supposed to be one of his elders, you're supposed to be one of the ones that try to stick up for him, try to vouch for him. He's part of the fraternity of the NBA, and the first chance you got, you ain't stand on nothing, you just was willing to throw him under the bus that quick. So I put Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal in the bucket of suckers, for the way that they behaved themselves recently, and they just people that can't be trusted. You know what I'm saying? It's that almighty dollar though, but that's the way of the world though. But let's check something else out right quick, cause this is what's crazy to me. This right here is crazy. So let's go Barnes and Noble. Let's see if the news comes up. Let's see. Barnes and Noble. Okay, here we go. So, anti-Semitic book from Kyrie Irving scandal removed from Barnes and Noble. Activists have been calling on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and other booksellers to remove Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America from their platform. The anti-Semitic book series popularized when the film adaptation was shared by basketball player Kyrie Irving has been removed from Barnes and Noble online stores. The Jerusalem Post found on Monday morning. Entries in the Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up to Black America series were available for purchase on the bookseller's website as recently as November the 1st. The first book in the series was also found to be number 69 on the Barnes and Noble's top 100 best-selling books. However, by at least Monday morning, all copies have been removed from the list and store. Barnes and Noble and other online book retailers have been the subject of scrutiny for the sale of the book and audiobook version since Irving shared on social media a link to the documentary adaptation of author Ronald Dalton Jr. works. Critics have described Dalton works as anti-Semitic. So we are in some crazy times right now, y'all. Like, you really have to just sit back and be amazed that we are in a time right now to where books are being pulled off of shelves. Not books that are inappropriate for children being pulled from libraries in elementary schools or high schools or something like that. This is a bookstore. This is like going to a public library where adults go to and things like that, and pulling books out of libraries. It's going back to when people were burning books back in the day, where you are trying to cut off the flow of information to a particular group based off of an opinion that you have of the material. Because you have a bunch of other people who say and who believe that he wasn't saying anything anti-Semitic. He was just giving a rundown of the history of the lost tribes and how black people went from Hebrews to Negroes. So you have some people that feel that way, but for you to feel the need to pressure Barnes and Noble, a bookstore that probably has way more controversial books in there than Hebrews to Negroes, but you're successful in getting the book pulled from there. Like, that's insane. Like, where are we going as a society if free speech is not allowed? Because it's censorship. It's really Orwellian at this point, because it doesn't stop there. And this is the thing: if you set precedent on situations like this, and a company feels like, or a particular group feels like they can get away with this, this won't be the last time that this happens. This is just the beginning, and it's only going to get worse. It's just like with cancel culture as a whole. Once these activists learn that they can go on Twitter and completely just bombard companies with tweets and phone calls and different things like that, and these companies begin to cut ties with individuals, it started off positive because finally the little man felt like they had a voice against these corporations. But now it's gotten to the point that you have so many different groups that are offended by so many different things that people are constantly getting cut off at every which way and turn. So what do you think that do you think that people are just going to say, oh no, this was just a unique situation and we would never support the censoring of books and information and things? No, they're not going to say that. They're not going to say that. This is going to get completely out of control, and you're going to have these constant activist attack campaigns against bookstores and libraries to pull books that their particular group disagree with. It's not readily accepted that what the ADL is saying is true. It's not readily accepted what anyone has the opinion on certain material is true. So based off that, how can you then take upon yourself, Barnes and Noble, to then feel like, oh, you need to remove this book as if what they are saying is fact and it can't be questioned at all? It just opens up Pandora's box for, a lot of bull to be coming your way in regards to censorship, in regards to books being pulled, in regards to pressure campaign by activists and things like that. So I just feel like you guys are now headed down a slippery slope, but you brought it on yourself because especially with freedom of speech and freedom of thought, you got to stand tall. Like, you got to stand tall. Like, you got to say, like what Spotify did with Joe Rogan, like, hey, we're about freedom of speech. We're about freedom of thought. A lot of the things that he said, we disagree with him as a company, but on those particular things, but we're not going to cancel him. We're not going to, strip him off of our podcast platform because they knew what that would open up in the future. Any host that comes on there, you just give them the power now. So you've just given them the power to control everything from that point forward. As soon as you bend the knee, they have you by the short and curlies. It's over. Now, anything that they don't agree with, they know that if they go hard enough on you, then they know you're going to crumble. But like you can see, when the cancel campaign didn't work against Spotify, you haven't heard it. You haven't heard them. They lost their will to fight with that because they see like, oh, Spotify ain't going for it. The same thing with Dave Chappelle and Netflix. Dave Chappelle and Netflix with the whole transgender thing and him and his monologues and his stand up in regards to the transgender lifestyle and the LGBT. Netflix stood tall on that because they know, okay, if we bend the knee to these activists complaining about this, these so-called activists walking out and not participating and quitting their job, then any content that we put up from here on out, they know that they're going to be able to control that. And that's going to be a problem. So if Netflix and Spotify stood tall on Rogan saying that the montage of Rogan saying the N-word in so many different forms of fashion, Dave Chappelle talking about transgenders and everything like that, how the hell did Barnes and Noble fold to the activist group and he didn't say anything? All he did was post a link. Make that make sense for me. Please make that make sense for me. Like, in these scary times, because I just do not, I'm just worried about the direction of the company when you have this level of censorship just readily accepted. In the past, you would have, columnists, reporters, fighting against that. But now it just seems like because the columnists and the reporters are activists first instead of journalists first, that since they agree with the different points of views and the different stances of the government in power right now, they don't want to rock the boat any. And that's the job of the fourth estate. The job of the fourth estate is to rock the boat. You're never supposed to just believe what the government says at face value. You're supposed to dig deep and try to get to the truth. And if it happens to be the truth, that's good. But if you constantly have that curiosity and you want to get to the bottom of it, then that's going to help you to make impactful stories for us, the people, so then that we can hold them accountable in government. But if you have the fourth estate working as accomplices with the government, what are we really doing here? What are we really doing here? But with that in hand, let's check something out right quick. Social media working with government to censor. Okay. Just the news alleged that this public-private partnership is a thinly veiled attempt to evade First Amendment restrictions on government censorship and compared it to the now discredited and discontinued Disinformation Governance Board. It is worth noting that the DHS, in its August 24th press release announcing the termination of the Disinformation Government Board, reaffirmed that countering disinformation that threatens the homeland and providing the public with accurate information and response is part of the DHS's mission. As part of this mission, since 2018, DHS's Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency, CISA, has been referring to the social media platforms posts it thinks constitute election disinformation and will almost certainly continue to do so. The issue of private sector collaboration is a red herring. Whether CISA or any other government agency works through a consortium of private sector companies or directly with social media companies seems irrelevant to the policy and speech issues involved. It's also worth noting that other countries have similar government operations, generally called internal referral units, and they are controversial around the world. Several years ago, there was an attempt to write them into the European Union's Terrorist Material Directive, but as law scholar Daphne Keller noted, objections from civil liberties moved the European Parliament to discard the section of the regulation. All right, so you have a situation to where you have the government pressuring social media companies to allow them access to certain tweets, certain posts, certain videos under the guise of we're protecting disinformation. These things cover things about the election, cover things about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, cover things about vaccines, anti-vaxxers, where COVID-19 originated from, all these different things. So if you're stating an opinion that's in contrast to the government's propaganda, then you're going to be labeled some type of disinformation, and then they're going to send a signal to the social media engineers to work their algorithm to either shadow ban you or permanently block you or deplatform you because you're not moving you're not in alignment to where what their opinion of the situation is, or the facts that they want to be the main facts out there. Do y'all see how dangerous this is? Because the crazy thing is when social media first came out, when you first had Facebook and then you had Twitter, it was, the idea was the little man finally was getting the opportunity to control their narrative. And that has always been a dangerous thing to the government and the powers that be, because you have to think, first you had, the town crier. The town crier was pumping out information that the kings and queens, they wanted to be disseminated within the town square. Then you had newspapers. Newspapers could always be control, but even back then, some, I have to give them credit back then, because you had some good writers, or you had some people who let out pamphlets and different things that didn't bend the knee to the powers that be. But still, the government could have their sources within the newspaper, control the narrative more so than they should be able to do now. Then you had radio. They could definitely put pressure on the different radio stations to put out a certain messaging that they felt was appropriate, be it to support a war or to not support a war, to build up the fear and to build up the anger towards the Germans in World War One, or to build up, the anger towards the Vietnamese with the Vietnam War. All this was controlled through, calculated propaganda delivered on certain mediums to affect the masses as a whole. Then you had TV news stations. So you have these big media conglomerates that work together to disseminate a certain type of information, a certain narrative, a certain perspective. So then you had just the .com era, web pages, different things like that. But with social media, that was something new, and it really was on some Wild Wild West shit, because you had people instantly writing their opinion or instantly posting facts to something, and it going directly to, you're getting it directly from the source. So you had things like Arab Springs pop up. You had, people who never before in these third world countries, who never had a voice but somehow had a phone and access to the internet, really giving us a first person look on what's going on, like what's really happening. You had the WikiLeaks, to where they're posting, information directly, what's going on. You had Eric Snowden, who's letting us know that Obama and them was spying on us and things. But all this is being directly given to us from social media. So they had to find a way to get this, to bring them to heel. So you pressuring these social media companies with all types of regulation, all types of barriers, to the point to where they know if these regulations are enacted, that it's going to slow up money, it's going to slow up growth, it's going to slow up subscriptions to the site or whatever. So then they begin to get a little bit closer and closer to the government, begin to cozy up a little bit more, just to placate them, appease them, so that they don't have to deal with these regulations and things like that. And then now you end up with a situation like we have now, to where it's backdoor communications, to where they're actually just stifling information through the algorithm. And then you have these social media CEOs just lying directly to their consumers' face saying, "Oh no, we don't shadow ban," or "Oh no, this went against our bullying policies, or this policy or that policy." But all it is against the whatever regimes in power, is against their narrative. So this is where I stand on this, though. It's always going to be a shift in power. It's never just going to be one side that reigns into the end of eternity. So when you have situations like this, to where you set a particular precedent, to where you, just because you agree with the things that they're censoring and agree with the narrative that they're shaping about a particular group, you don't speak up against the bullshit. And that's the problem. That's the main problem, because when that power fades and another group moves into that power base, but the precedent has been set for them to censor, they're going to then turn that power against you and your group, and you're not going to be for it. You're going to be online, you're going to be complaining, writing your senator, doing all these things, but then they're just going to point to, hey, but when this happened, you didn't have anything to say when they were doing it to this particular group. That's why no matter nothing that happens when it comes to censoring, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, all groups, arch enemies or whatever, should speak out against that, because it's against everyone's common good if we continue to give power to the government to take away our rights and our freedoms. That has to be that needs to be a understood fact. It doesn't need to be, that should be the least polarizing thing in today's society. When the government begins to tighten its grip and remove our rights and our sovereignty as American citizens, then we all need to stand up against that. So it's crazy times out here. That's why I decided to, start this channel. Because I have an opinion. I love to read news articles. I love politics. I love pop culture. I love all these different things, and I have an opinion on that. But I like to dive a little bit deeper than just the headlines, a little bit deeper than just the clickbait, and just sit here, read through a couple articles, and have an actual conversation with y'all. So I hope that y'all stick with me. Hope that y'all like, subscribe, and follow, and share this with a friend, and I hope that we continue to grow together. So this your host, 44K. K stand for Kincaid. It's been real. Peace. Y'all have a nice one.